This is a HeadGum podcast.
Hello. This is Fake the Nation, where we talk about culture with zest and verve, and we talk about news, where we trudge up any morsels left in our reserve of faith and optimism. I am your host, Negin Farsad, and guys, I was built for this challenge. Today, we're going to ask if this is the Democrats' Tea Party moment. We'll also look at the scourge of sports betting and ask, is the pace of trends breaking Gen Z? And finally, today's panelists will share their expert guidance on how to keep your relationship fun. And they're the guys that do it. They're really the ones. Yeah. They're the experts, and they're gonna fucking tell us. You guys, the panelists today are so incredible. They're regulars on their show. You know them. You love them. You love to know when they're coming back on. Joining us is comedy writer and co-host of the podcast, Yo, Is This Racist? He's just an all-around incredible, talented young man. It is the wonderful Andrew T. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, thanks for having me. Young is very charitable. I appreciate it.
We also have joining us, he is, I want to just go ahead and say, an audio legend. He's been in the space since before it was a space. He has a new podcast out called Summer Album, Winter Album, and he is the incredible Jody Avirgan. Hey, Jody.
Hey there. I'm so glad you finally got around to introducing this podcast 24 hours and 17 minutes into this marathon. I know Cory Booker was inspiring, but we really, Andrew and I have been sitting here. It's been rough. Dehydrated.
Which is, by the way, Cory Booker should have just done a bunch of podcasts from the podium.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like bro podcasters who are like 24 hours.
God.
Come on.
Yeah, for real. Listen, I wanted to say about Summer Album, Winter Album, because before we were formally taping, Andrew, I would say rather disrespectfully.
Yeah, he talked shit within like 12 seconds after hearing about my podcast, he was talking shit.
Andrew, can you quote yourself and what
I'll try to remember with my cooked attention span. I did say
you want to recreate it? You want to recreate it? Hey, Andrew, I'm a big fan. Let me tell you about my new show.
By the way, Jody literally did compliment Andrew like yesterday over email. So the fact that like Andrew came in hot with an insult was so.
I do not find this to be an insult, but I do find this to be a truth, which is in a good way. I kind of think I did say. Are you in New York? Because that's the most New York-ass podcast idea I've ever heard.
Well, first off, how many podcasters are not in New York?
In Los Angeles, we currently, last night, I had like a cozy soup-based meal because it was basically as cold as it's going to get for the year in April last night. Yeah. Give or take. Admittedly about 15 degrees, but the vibe was it's a chilly night. It's a chilly night. Well, I've missed having a winter album, I guess. I've missed having a winter, having a summer. I mean, LA still obviously has a pretty big summer, but and
my retort to that, Andrew, is that as someone who grew up in Palm Springs, California, and just really only knew hot and then less hot. The moment I realized that there was a distinctly summer sound and a distinctly not summer sound was Will Smith's Summertime, which is so built into the title, obviously.
You're going out on a limb and saying that's summer music?
But I remember as a child being like, oh, this song literally does sound like summer. Like, I remember having this brilliant thought, like, as a child. But I just was like, oh, my God, it really does sound like summer, guys. Do you guys get that this song sounds like that? And I felt so strongly, and I realized in that moment, not every song is for every season, you know? Yeah. And now Jody has a podcast devoted to this very concept that my, childhood Negin would have swooned at your podcast.
Well, look, I will say, I think you are proof of the case that there's a lot to kind of discuss when you create this fairly arbitrary binary between summer albums and winter albums. But it is this interesting nexus. I hosted with this guy, Craig Finn, who's the lead singer of The Hold Steady, a very thoughtful guy about music. But, it's this very interesting question of do you start with your personal experience with it, or do you start with something inherent in the music, and how do you sort of dissect it? But then also another element, Andrew, to your point, is summer and winter mean different things in different parts of the country. And like even when you're in California, there's still a kind of like notion of winter that's different from, say, the Northeast. And so we've discussed albums where we're like, this is a California winter album, but that might be different from something other thing. You know, so
I think
guys,
I do.
It's rich territory.
What will be surprising to everyone is that none of that is a part of today's show. Wait, Jody, can you adjust your camera for the 7 people who watch us on YouTube? I think we need more of your head.
Oh yeah, great.
Yeah,
there it is. Guys,
Production.
He's not bald. He has all of that hair.
Oh wow, I didn't realize where was it cut off? Okay, there you go.
It was just I was cutting you off. Now listen, I want to remind listeners that you can support the show at patreon.com/Negin Farsad. I'm really promoting the $1 tier. Now, what you get for $1 is literally nothing. You just support the show. At $4, you get bonus episodes. At $5, you get even more bonus. There's other tiers. You get where you get stuff. But like, what an interesting tier that just gives you emotional satisfaction. Huh? Come on.
For just $1, emotional satisfaction.
For just $1.
Wow.
That's all it takes. Now, the other thing I want to let audiences know is that we're actually taping this very early. So if you think that you're going to hear whatever the fuck garbage thing happened this week, that you're probably not. But you are going to hear other garbage things. So don't worry. There's plenty of garbage to go around. All right, let's get into it with topic number 1. We read a piece in the New York Times titled Too Many Trends, and immediately I wanted to click on it because I'm not even trying to follow the trends like personally in my dress, but I still feel exhausted by them. And according to the piece, what we're experiencing now is the constant crushing wave of micro trends that come and go in a matter of weeks. The pace is so dizzying that it has left the youngs of Gen Z disoriented. Now, my question to the two of you is, have you noticed, this kind of pace of trend setting in the now times?
I have, but I have just assumed it was coincident with me being old enough to ruin trends. The superpower I realize now that I'm old is I can, and combined with the internet, the fact that it is all like just out there, is I can ruin things for my friends' kids so quickly just by knowing about it. Like I'm just like, I just like, alley-ooping the reference, whatever, and you just watch their little faces just like fucking be crushed. It's delightful. It's like, I know about this because you dummies put it on the internet, which everyone has access to. It used to be you had to like whisper about it in the lunchroom, or like, like when the teacher asked, what are you guys talking about? Or when your dad asked, what are you talking about? You just giggle and be like, you wouldn't understand, old man. And now old man can look at the same internet that you can. And guess what? I can basically get it. So yeah, I love it.
Huh. Well, I also I've been watching the Netflix show Adolescence, which is so fucking depressing but good and like whatever. Anyways, everyone's been talking about it. No one needs my recommendation on it. But one of the scenes, I'm not giving anything away, is like a kid explaining an internet expression to an adult. And it's funny because I think you're right. Like all this stuff is there and we can see we're not necessarily always gleaning the right thing from it. And I will say I'm going to just be honest with you both, is I don't understand emojis the way I think I should. Okay? my emoji translation skills are bad. And so I think like that's one of those things where you're like, oh, but it doesn't take very much to figure it out. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right about that, Andrew. Jody, where are you on trends?
I mean, something, Andrew, you said kind of makes me think that one of the paradoxes of a kind of trend or a something that you feel really sort of aligned to, especially when you're young, is that like it both needs to feel like no one else knows about it, but of course you also need other people to know about it in order to sort of commune around it. And so a part of me is like, that's always been the case. That's always been the thing with trends, is that, you have your little community, you want it to feel small, but you want to feel collective. And when an old person kind of intrudes, you're going to freak out. I mean, that happened when I was in high school. I think that's happened for teenagers since, the beginning of time. So I guess the question is kind of what has the internet changed, because I think I do buy this sort of premise of like the acceleration and the microization. And there's one, have you heard about I think it's called the paradox of one viewer? But it's basically this idea, like if you think of it on YouTube, like you can go on YouTube and basically type in like any combination of like two random words, and you'll find like someone making like, unicorn cast iron skillet cleaning. And you'll find like someone in a unicorn outfit cleaning a cast iron. And if you sort of play that out, it means that eventually every video on YouTube will be so targeted that it'll basically have one viewer, because it'll be for that one, for one person who checks every single box of interest for that one specific thing. So in some way we're heading towards that, and that makes me a little uneasy because
sad. Yeah.
I kind of think it's important to have a little bit of monoculture while at the same time leaving space for people to find their own super small tribes within it. And I just think the internet is like really just like pushing at the boundaries of all of that.
Well, and I just wanted to I wrote down a bunch of trends from the last few years that I remember, and I think it's an example
this is
of how
embarrassing. I'm looking forward. to this.
So it started with normcore, which is like years ago now. I don't even remember when normcore was, but if maybe it was even pre-pandemic, I don't remember. But normcore, I felt like was the last time there was a trend, and it lasted a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this is the stuff I remember: cottagecore, goblin core, coastal grandpa, eclectic grandpa, quiet luxury, Y2K revival, dark academia, old money, and I just wrote down slips, just because right now every woman, right, girl out there is wearing just slips that are not actual dresses. They're just slips that you wear under dresses.
90s are back.
Anyways.
But haven't there always been fads? Like when we were teenagers,
right.
You'd like go through your goth phase, and that was like 2.5 weeks. But it felt like this huge phase.
Your phase was 2.5 weeks, but goth was around. I mean, has been around. Well, anyone can dip in and out of goth. That's not. But something like cottagecore feels like a TikTok phenomenon for a few weeks. Someone in the New York Times writes about it. Andrew says it to a young person, and then it's over.
Yeah. And I kill it.
That's
right? Great.
That's always the end.
But I wonder, and I without I feel like we're all of a certain generation. We're of the generation that watched the internet become a thing, even if maybe technically it was around when we were conscious. And the thing that I have always kind of thought, and this, as you're saying it, I'm wondering if this is maybe coalescing into something sort of cogent, is that like the difference between people whose brains formed before the internet and formed after is like recognizing or just like thinking of the stream as the discrete unit rather than each of the pieces as the discrete unit. So like the unit of trend is not normcore to cottagecore to blah 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 blah. It's TikTok told me all these things and I've been following a flow. Yeah. Like the thing that you're subscribing to is the notion of TikTok or the notion of 4 or 5 TikTokers who fit you demographically, aspirationally, whatever the fuck. Or it's just like the trend is not any trend, it's the idea of trends. And are you going to keep up with it or not? And
that's the sort of algorithmic pressure that everyone feels to keep up. Right?
Trouble realizing that's what's happening, but I do think that's what's happening, and I do think it is like when our brains coalesced around the idea of like an idea.
Right, and well, the other interesting thing is like if we're then subscribing to like these trends, which I think we're not subscribing to any trends, right? The three of us probably, I don't feel any pressure, but I'm not in the age group that's susceptible to those pressures, right? So like if you're a teenager, and it's because when I was a teenager, I was susceptible to those pressures. So I can imagine being like, no, but Stanley cups aren't big anymore. It has to be a different cup, or whatever. And so I can picture the age group that's susceptible. And what's also interesting is that we're supposed to think of Gen Z as like the fucking generation that's going to save us from climate change. But the thing with all of these trends is that now a single garment, the average number of times a single garment is worn is decreased by 36%. So are they not only like not gonna be the environmental leaders like at this moment, maybe if a couple years down the line they will be, but like it's just like they're not making the connection between this obsessive trends establishment and like what it means for like the purchase of the goods that they're, you know what I mean?
Without
they're not
getting
making that environmental connection.
Unbelievably dark, I think the thing that will demographically give us a chance at affecting climate change is going to be economic collapse. Like we're going to be consuming less, not because we've decided the trends are different. It's that we literally can't afford to.
Great.
Okay.
I'm ready to yes and that, Andrew. Perfect. Way to set it up for me.
Thank you so much. And also, we usually save economic collapse for topic number 2. Yeah. So, but you're really innovating here by bringing it in early on the culture topic.
But can I add one thing, or do you want to move
Jody,
on?
close it up for us.
No, I mean, I feel like the way we frame this conversation is a lot about the kind of like hyper-specific nature of trends and the speed. And I always, like I said, I think that's always kind of been there, and people will always try and find like the very specific thing that turns them on or that they're interested in. I worry about the other side of the spectrum, which is like, how do you get there? Are we engaging with stuff that is like not our cup of tea? And, I think sometimes being forced to deal with stuff that you don't like is a great way to find out what you do. And I think a little bit we're losing that. I mean, the fact that you can go on the internet and find something that feels like it's perfectly catered to you and if you don't, you can immediately move past it. I mean, I think all of us growing up, there were moments where we had to watch a movie that we didn't like in full, right? And then get to the end of it and reckon with that, and then you learn something. And now there's just you can pull out your phone, you can move on and so forth. And so I'm just worried about the broad side of this funnel less than I am, the wide side of this funnel less than I am with the kind of super narrow part of it.
And I wanted to end it, but let me say one last thing, which is that, I think you're absolutely right. I was having this conversation about, the radio with friends this weekend, and it was basically that my daughter will put on the radio in rare situations when we're in a car, mostly when we're visiting my parents in California, and she'll be like, no, can you put on my Taylor Swift song or whatever? And I'm like, no, we're going to listen to the radio. And the radio includes songs you do like, you don't like, you've never heard, you're discovering. And you're letting someone else be your curator so that you can learn about things you don't like. And she was just sort of fast forward through this song. And I'm like, okay, so this is as a parent, one of my duties is to force her to listen to shit she doesn't like, which I think it sounds ridiculous as I say it out loud, but I do think it's one of my jobs is to be like, no, you don't get to live a life without friction. And that includes cultural friction. You have to experience that so that you don't like Metallica. We will learn that together about you. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, I don't mean to throw Metallica under the bus, but I've never enjoyed it. All right,
I wonder.
Let us move.
Quick pitch, which is, I wonder if you could set up a parenting thing, which is as long as you can articulate why you don't like this in 200 words, then we can skip.
That's great.
200 words. My God, we're giving them word counts in this parenting exercise.
Well, she can't just say I hate it, but it's why? Right, what about it don't you hate?
Totally.
Exactly. Engage in critical analysis. And that's what cultural friction lets you do. We're now moving on to take a quick break so we can learn about our sponsors. And then when we come back, there will be more. And we are back and we're ready for topic number 2. Politics, you guys. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this phenomenon, because in 2009, Republicans were pissed because they lost to Barack Obama, who then bailed out Wall Street and managed to pass Obamacare and all these things that really angered them. And as a result, the Tea Party movement kind of came into being, which I think now looking back on it felt like the proto-MAGA movement. So here we are in a similar situation in 2025 where Democrats have lost the presidency. They've lost both chambers of commerce. There are umpteen changes happening, mostly by executive order, that we cannot stand. And so my question is, has our anger, or the anger of the Democrats, reached the point where they might actually create a Tea Party-like movement? Is that where we are?
Well, I got my start in journalism right around this time, and the Tea Party was
Tea Party.
No, and it was like kind of the first sort of movement I covered. And, I think that it's important to remember that the Tea Party was less of a grassroots movement than maybe it sometimes gets credit for. It started with a rant on CNBC by this guy, Rick Santelli, talking about, railing against the bailout in the wake of the 2008 financial disaster. But it was like, it was sort of an elite phenomenon as much as it was a sort of grassroots movement. But certainly the town halls that happened going into 2010 are very reminiscent of what we're seeing now. And I remember, just a couple months ago when Congress first went on break, I remember I thought of the Tea Party and I was like, gosh, I wonder what's going to happen when all these representatives go back to their local districts and have to have these town halls. Are people going to be pissed at them? And lo and behold, people were. And that's where I think a lot of the kind of energy that maybe the left is finally feeling is coming from. So I think in that way, it certainly scans. I think there's this larger interesting question of what happens in the wake of a revolt like that, and the Republican Party basically capitulated to the Tea Party / absorbed it, in a way that let them chart a path forward. And I think it could play out very differently for Democrats. It could be a pure schism. It could be an absorption. It could be whatever. But it's not just inherent that you get this grassroots energy and that's going to be good or something, right?
Okay, Andrew, what do you think?
I will say, I'll just preface this by saying I am maybe unhelpfully far to the left on this topic. However, the thing that has always been I think that I've been trying to puzzle out, which is the conventional political wisdom has always been the safer your seat as a politician, the more it pushes you towards extremes. The big example in my mind is your sort of Marjorie Taylor Greene type people, super safe, and therefore, able to get sort of kookier, more right wing, more conservative as that seat becomes more safe. And I was always thinking, what the hell is the left-wing version of that? So I'm in a district that was for many, 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 many years formerly represented by Adam Schiff. I will be honest, I don't actually remember who my current congressperson is. But Adam Schiff forever, safe as can be. Just a Democratic stronghold. But I'm Adam Schiff, no offense, has been pretty down the middle, centrist, technocratic. If you went by the same logic that allegedly created Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm sorry, is my audio fucked up? Oh, no, you're good. Okay.
No, you're good.
If you go by the logic that allegedly created Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm how come Adam Schiff isn't calling for nationalizing the oil companies and beheading CEOs? Why isn't there the thing? And my sort of worry is that he has been the most Democrat that you were going to be, which is sort of this centrist, in my opinion, too conciliatory to the right wing politician. And so that is sort of my worry, is that we've kind of already had the Democratic Tea Party, in that the most extreme version of a Democrat is this centrist while you're going off a cliff, or while, again, in my opinion, I understand it's not everyone's, you're completely enabling far right fascists.
Then what do you make of people like Bernie and AOC who are out there doing the what is it called, the anti-oligarchy tour? And where do those Democrats lie, who are also extremely popular?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. like the thing is, the popularity has not manifested in anything, largely because I think, in my opinion, I'm not a politics person. Like Democrats operate out of a place of fear so often. So we have been at the end of the day, even me, someone who, I'll be honest, couldn't stand Joe Biden, wasn't stoked about Kamala's campaign by the time it was election day. 100%. I'm voting. I'm doing everything I can.
Yeah.
We're just in a bind. So I just don't know how to fight the establishment in that way.
I will say one thing that does feel maybe that, I don't know if this feels Tea Party-ish or something, but it's just the idea that Tim Walz talked about this in some podcast appearances and stuff recently, where he said we can't just the strategy can't be let's watch Trump embarrass himself and then we'll just win elections because he sucks so bad.
Yeah, that's
not a proactive strategy, and I think maybe that was a little bit that does feel a little bit similar, or I do think that's a shift because we have been able to win that way. We won in 2018 that way. We won in 2020. It was enough to just be let's look at this guy being an idiot.
Well,
and come out to vote.
A couple things. So one, Andrew, to your point about kind of a safe seat, pushing people to the extremes. I wonder if it's less pushing people to the extremes along what you would consider a traditional right-left ideological spectrum, and more kind of it allows someone to be the purest version of what they are. And I think Adam Schiff is probably the purest version of Adam Schiff with and maybe the Democrats, which is pretty centrist, pretty accommodating, pretty fearful, and so forth, for better, and often for worse. Whereas Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think sees the writing on the wall and says the best, the current version of a successful Republican is one that just totally capitulates to Trump and pushes in that direction. I think the key point when you bring up people like AOC and Bernie is, well, one, we did have a big Bernie moment, and it continues a little bit. We did have a big Bernie moment, and I think the party leadership basically shut it down. And that's very different from the Republicans, where they capitulated to Trump, and they read the writing on the wall. But AOC and Bernie also show, and I think this is the big issue with Democrats right now, is there's this idea that they need to be, responsive to public opinion, right? And AOC and Bernie show that you can actually shape public opinion, right? If you talk about something enough, you can actually move people. And I bet you there's a lot of people who voted for AOC, when she first came on the scene, who maybe didn't have super left-wing economic politics, but they took a flyer on her. She was the Democratic candidate. And over time, you just keep making the case, public opinion shifts. And I feel like when we talk about a Tea Party moment right now for the Democrats, it's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of realizing, to your point, Negin, we need to not just be responsive. We need to not just be anti-Trump or wait for it to collapse. We need to actually forcefully shift public opinion and state a case. And I think that the Tea Party shook Republicans a little bit in that way. And I think this current moment is doing the same for Democrats.
All right. Well, I'm curious to hear, folks, do you one thing I will say about the Tea Party is that I remember you said you started your kind of career around this time, Jody, and I similarly started getting hired to do videos for different, places like MoveOn.org and stuff. And I don't remember who sent me to a Tea Party event. Mm-hmm. And I went and I talked to people, and they were, the other thing that they would wear the tri-corner hat, right? Yeah. And there was a lot of costume play in these events. And I will say, I'm not seeing costumes in whatever's happening. You don't have
your pussy hat in the closet over there?
I don't think that's being resurrected. You know what I mean? Every woman has one, but they're not going to wear it.
I would say ideally the uniform of a left-wing Tea Party is not as much like pussy hat and a little more like Antifa black.
Yeah, or Maoist
Well,
fatigues.
my vote, and the listeners have heard me say this before, but I want us to like take back the flag and have us be wearing like American flag T-shirts, and we're like the real patriots. Like that's my position, is that we're the real patriots, and why we abdicated the flag to a bunch of people who would free insurrectionists makes absolutely no sense. That's our flag. You know what I mean? So that's my vote for your outfits out there. Let's shift gears and talk about something that I think is insane. Sports betting is legal in many states. I think it's a big problem. It was legalized in 2018 with a Supreme Court case, and now you can fucking do it on your phone. Now, this is the statistic that I thought was insane, and you guys might be in the statistic, I don't know. Almost half of men between the ages of 18 and 49 have an active online sports betting account. Oh my fucking God. I didn't know it was that big. So as representatives of all men in America, can you tell me, are you in this wildly large statistic, and what does sports betting mean to either of you?
I've been nodding too vigorously to not jump in, I suppose.
Yeah.
I am not a sports bettor. I have been playing poker and trying to figure out like what exactly my win rate is at sort of low stakes poker. So I'm around a lot of these people. And I saw this probably on Twitter, but maybe on Blue Sky, but somewhere online, which is like someone just sort of saying, their speculation is the next sort of like big opioid crisis style crisis of young men is going to be sports betting. And I watched, in my eye, the primest example of this I've ever seen. I was at a poker table with a very clearly losing poker player in California, where sports betting, I don't believe, is legal. On a FaceTime, I watched him wire $4,000. He also was just doing this on his phone at the poker table. Wire $4,000 to, I assume, someone in another state who was holding their FaceTime camera up to a laptop, and he was loudly walking them through sports bets. And I was just like, this generation is toast. Like the like.
How old was this guy?
In his early 20s. I was just like he's, I believe, the exact demographic you're talking about, which I was just like, oh shit, this is so deeply bad. And like, I recently took a trip to Las Vegas to play poker, and I was just like listening to people talk about, gambling people are obviously like, except for games like poker where you can have an advantage over the field and you're not playing against the house. But largely, like, I guess I would call it innumeracy, like just the fundamental misunderstanding of like statistics, odds, like motivation. Why would a casino give these odds? Like, you can't beat them. They built this whole place off of your inability to beat them. DraftKings runs multi-million-dollar ad campaigns and stays in business. How? Someone has to be losing that money, and
all the time.
And it's not like, yes, of course. It's just like amazing watching these folks think that they're the exception, or I'm guessing economic desperation is making them need to be the exception. Sort of like, but I was just like, this is crazy. This guy's also punting money at poker, but I'm just like watching him like so unbelievably casually and loudly just like throw 300 on that, throw 300 on that. I got a good feeling about that one, 450. It was deeply upsetting. Like, I was just like, oh no.
God, that
this
makes
is
me
so
very
bad.
depressed.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Jody, you're a sports person.
I'm a sports
right?
person, not a sports gambling person. I mean, a couple times I've dabbled, but yeah, I mean, Andrew, I think I agree. I mean, I think I agree with you. There's a big reckoning coming, and there's a big conversation about how that reckoning is coming now. I suppose the question is, there will always be problem gamblers and addictive personalities, and I think anything, I guess, that makes that easier and removes the friction to that is problematic on its own. But to me, I kind of feel like the rise of sports betting is more of like a symptom of a bunch of other much deeper kind of problems and rots than, than just sports betting itself. And so, I think like the loneliness epidemic and, especially for young men, and like, sports was supposed to be kind of the last place where we had like a shared culture and people could come together and so forth. And this is a thing that is just like isolating us even within that space. And so I worry about that. And then the like economic side of it too. I mean, I'm not surprised in the rise of sports betting, and it feels like similar to me to the rise of like day trading and like apps like Robinhood and so forth. And just this idea of the like gamification of finances and the economy. And, part of me is like, well, when the entire economy feels like a crapshoot, and when like all of the things that were safe for previous generations feel like they could disintegrate at any point, then why not like gamble, whether that's trading on Robinhood or sports betting or whatever. Like, and so I think there's just this larger phenomenon that is like, showing itself through the rise of sports betting. That
I sat through, first of all, also like half of these guys who are like sports betting are also wearing like fucking Bitcoin like paraphernalia. So it is the same mentality. I did sit through a pitch from like a friend of a friend the other day about why I should get into meme coins I'll just, again, no shade to any type of profession, but this guy was a musician who multiple times said he didn't understand math. And it was unbelievably depressing listening to him pitch a thing and not listening to me point out the like sort of obvious logical flaws and conflicts of interest in the sources he was saying, like, just follow this lady's trades. And I'm like, they always go up after she tweets about them. And I'm like, do you not see how that's a market manipulation? Like, of course they go up for a second. Like, it was just one of those things where I was like, I don't know how to talk to this person. And he's so deeply invested in this that it is like his personality. It's like, I genuinely think
what I don't understand is like I don't see the pro argument. Like, I don't see what the benefit to society. There's, every time a service comes around or whatever, you have to wonder like, oh, what does this like do? Who benefits, right? And I don't see what this does and and who could possibly benefit.
Well,
the only benefit is to the right. I'm talking like in terms of like legitimate public service and public good. There is no positive recipient of this service. If people are making money off of it, and and I don't know what the argument is. It's fun, and then and then people lose their fucking entire livelihoods. Like, I don't understand.
Well, I mean, I think the reason a lot of these things became legal is because the argument was, why is it illegal? Which I think is a reasonable question to ask. I don't think sports betting should be illegal. But do you need to go all the way towards, it's app-based, it's on your phone, you can do it in a second, there's no friction to it whatsoever, so forth. So it's like very similar to drugs. Like, I think most drugs should be legalized. I also don't think it should be super easy to get it. And I think there should be support for people who provide who develop addictive personalities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, just to frame kind of why we are where we are.
Like, it goes back to the conversation about, like, listening to the radio. Yeah. There should be, like, friction to, you describe driving to Las Vegas to do poker.
That's
it's
what
funny
they
because
say do poker.
Yeah. To do
the poker.
Poke it out.
My husband also used to poke it out, if you will. He also used to poke it out in college he used to like earn money to then live. Like, that's how he kind of earned some money, was playing poker.
Absolutely.
And he would drive to a casino, and it was like they would have to like, and he was a football player, so he had a rigorous schedule and blah, blah, blah. So it's like he couldn't do it all the time. And he had to like be really like disciplined about how he did it so he didn't lose money, that he would in fact gain money with this one particular skill he had, which was he was good at poker. And now, I mean, I don't even know. So I don't know if how you play poker online or whatever, all that stuff. But the point is, if like there was friction, there was limitations to how much he could play.
Yeah.
And I can picture someone who had less discipline than him just getting sucked into the world and then losing everything because whatever, you know what I mean? So there's no, if it's in your phone, it's just gonna fuck you. And I just do not see the reason for it. What is the public good of it being
I will say, if we really want to scrape the bottom of the barrel in search of a silver lining, I do want to push back a little tiny bit on the thing Jody said about this contributing to loneliness, which I do think, to the extent that there is any value to, we'll just say, like, disadvantaged financial plays, whether it's sports betting, whether it's like cryptocurrency, whether it's fucking meme coins. And that is, like, there actually is a community. I do think personally it's a community of morons, half of which are scamming you and some of which are cultivating the community in an effort to scam you.
Is that a community?
Well, I think unfortunately it is.
I mean, it's the best we have right now.
It's that the guys in the Bitcoin hats do provide each other with something, which is camaraderie. So, like, I do think that camaraderie is then, need for camaraderie is being taken to, like, almost directly drain expected value from your bank account. But it is community. Like, that's what you're paying for.
No, and I mean, Andrew, I appreciate that reframing, and I think I agree with you in that. I think that's why I see things like this as a symptom of the loneliness epidemic. In that, my God, like, this is how bad it is that this is where people are finding community. In spaces like this.
These guys are friends for sure. They're, I don't want to be friends with them, but they are 100% friends.
Yeah, Negin, I mean, just to sort of put a fine point on what you said, which I think is so important. Like, a lot of these conversations, we've even done it. I've done it in this chat. Like, we talk about, it's online or it's a problem, and I just think, like, the problem is actually a phone and an app that is algorithmically driven, and its sole goal is to keep you on that app. And whether that's through scrolling and through videos or through gambling or through porn or through whatever, like, that is the problem. And I've come to, and so it's not that the internet is a problem. It is a very specific sort of phone-based phenomenon. I've really come to kind of believe in this. And so we don't need to unwind the internet. We need to just think about basically the last 10 years of this shift to an algorithmically app-based driven, phone-based driven digital experience. And that is the real problem. Yeah,
because I honestly, in the days when all of this shit existed, but it was on my laptop, it seemed completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And wonderful. Like, we have to remember the original promise and beauty of the internet was so amazing. To your point, Andrew, like, oh my God, I can find people.
Yeah.
Social media was actually social, and that has changed in recent years. And so we just have to focus on that shift.
Just this morning, I deleted everything besides messaging and, like, actual utility apps from my phone. There's, like, no social media.
And how long is this gonna? Oh, Andrew, you gotta keep us posted, and let's see how long this lasts. Because I was just I was just talking to an actor who's a very well regarded actor who's, I'm not gonna name drop, but I will say he's well regarded, and he had just switched to a flip phone.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and I looked at that flip phone with such lust. I mean, it was like a fucking turkey leg and I was a cartoon character. And I really, it might be coming for me. The flip phone might be coming for me. It's the problem is, like, if I'm in Mobile, Alabama, as I was last week, and I need to get around and then it can't get the Uber on the flip. Can you get the Uber on the flip phone? That's the only question. Because in New York City, I got cabs, but in other places, what are we doing?
I think consider just deleting the apps from your smartphone that are the ones that you don't need. I literally, I deleted, with too much information, I will say it's almost noon West Coast time. And so it was 8 a.m. when I deleted
so you're
social
4
media.
hours
Literally just I'm in withdrawal still. And while I was making breakfast, I tried to check Blue Sky 4 times.
Yeah.
And each time I didn't do it, but I was like, holy shit. Like,
but you picked it up.
I didn't even think about
it.
My thumb was hovering over the exact spot where the icon used to be. And I was like, no. Oh my God.
I'm disgusted in all of us because I know that I do that shit. I know that I do that shit. All right. Listen, we're going to talk about one quick little thing. We've run out of time to get your relationship advice, but I do want to know because
for the best.
that this is like, let's just call this your topic number 3, which is that for like literally 2 minutes, the Los Angeles Times is now on its opinion pieces will be using an AI-generated rating of their political content and AI-generated alternative political views. And I should note that the newspaper is owned by billionaire Patrick Soon-Shiong. Andrew, you live in LA. What do you think?
I will just say, I do think like people are very clearly, the more AI gets pushed in front of people or this large language model AI type thing, the more it's super clear consumers don't want to trust it. Like no one trusts it. No one believes it. No one uses it in any real way. So I sort of welcome this in that like, yeah, let's see the literal marketplace of ideas and watch this fall on its face. Like I don't like it, but I'm not scared of it, I suppose.
But I find it so odd because opinion pieces are not lying about their opinion. Like it's clear, you know what I mean? It's like
Sure.
The point of this piece is for me to tell you a thing that is an opinion, like that is partisan. So what the fuck? Like it just feels a little ridiculous. It's sort of like reinforcing the thing that it already is. Why?
My guess is they already bought the AI like software and they're like, gotta use it somewhere.
They didn't want it to go. They didn't want it to go bad.
It's a sunk cost
really
fallacy.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, it's like buying an avocado. If you don't eat it at the right time, then it's over.
Gotta go somewhere.
Jody, what do you think about it? And you're from journalism.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add other than I agree with Andrew. Like, I think largely speaking, this stuff is like slop, and people will recognize that and revolt against it. That doesn't change the fact that a bunch of people probably got fired and replaced by this bot, and that's bad.
Yeah.
I do like the idea that like people hate this stuff and they let them put it on there and everyone just kind of sits there hating it or whatever. And not about AI, but related to AI. I was in an airport with the wonderful Fake the Nation alums and excellent comedians, Allison Leiby and Josh Gondelman. And the three of us walked up to this coffee place, like excited to get some coffee when we were on a layover. And literally all three of us, our hearts sank when we realized that we had to order the coffee through a fucking screen. and I was like, oh, this is so validating, because I thought it was literally just my heart that sank when I saw a screen that made you order, and that everyone else just does it elegantly and they're fine with it. And it's like they've been around obviously now for some time, but like every time I'm forced to order something over a screen, but I'm in person, like I truly want to fucking kill myself. I genuinely think of leaving the store. I literally was like, maybe I just don't do this store at all.
I really do think the pendulum is swinging back. I mean, I think more people are doing what Andrew, has been trying for the last 3.5 hours. I think more people are revolting to the AI-ification. Like I really do, and it's not just sort of people of our age, but I really think.
I love that. I hope you're absolutely right, Jody. And I do think you're right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. And we're all seeing that it doesn't feel good. All right. Folks, that is the end of the show. Thank you so much for doing the show. The people of Fake Nation, they know you. They love you. You guys are regulars. As fan favorites, tell the people, where can they follow you and all the wonderful things that you do? Andrew.
I mean, nowhere. I deleted everything off my phone. Just find my apartment and yell at me. But Andrew T on every social media. I'll find it when I get to a computer.
No, right. So that's your plan, is to just check in when you're on a laptop?
Yeah.
Okay,
I got a
great.
desktop.
Oh shit! That's even more limiting. I love that.
It's amazing.
Okay.
Your video quality over dial-up is remarkable, man.
Yeah, it really is. The ping sound is annoying, but it's only in mine.
Jody, where do people find you?
I'll plug 2 podcast projects. So, I mean, he doesn't need my help, but I'm one of the executive producers of Trevor Noah's podcast, What Now? And I think we touch on a lot of the same issues that you like to touch on here. So I would love for people to listen to that. And then I have a new show with Craig Finn of The Hold Steady. It is called Summer Album, Winter Album, where we talk about some of our favorite albums and debate whether they are summer albums or winter albums, which are the only 2 choices. But it's been really, really fun.
I know. There should be like an umami choice in there. You know what I mean?
We'll see.
All right, folks, you know where to find me and all the things that I do. I'll be at Wait, Don't Tell Me think it's on April 24th. Wouldn't it be fun if I actually knew the date? Anyways, but I think it's that. And if you're at the TED conference, I am there right now performing as on the day that this drops. So come find me. And otherwise, I want to thank everyone who makes the show a possibility. That's our wonderful producer, Andrew McGuire. Thanks to everyone at HeadGum. Thanks to Gaby for our theme music. And you can reach us at fakethenationpodcast@gmail.com with any of the ideas or questions that you might have. You can support the show for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/Negin Farsad. And otherwise, we'll be back in your earballs next week.
That was a HeadGum podcast.